If you're looking for something unique to do with an empty aquarium, why not try setting up a tank for a pet other than fish? Today we'll build a 10-gallon planted tank that will be perfect for some fun and interesting new inhabitants, African dwarf frogs. African dwarf frogs are unique creatures with a couple specific care requirements, but they aren't hard to meet with a little preparation. They can be kept in as little as a 5-gallon tank all the way on up to 50 plus. A 10 is just simple and small enough to fit in all kinds of places, so it'll be the perfect starting point for keeping these animals. To start out, I cleaned the tank and got it ready on a sturdy shelf. The first thing to consider is the type of substrate that will be going into the tank. There is debate on what is best for this specific animal, but ultimately it seems like it comes down to preference. Some argue gravel is best, some argue for sand. For this build, I'll be using an aqua soil on the bottom and topping it with a layer of inert quartz sand. The soil is there to help give the plants a boost in nutrients to grow. This can be set up with just one type of substrate though, if preferred. Using something like root tabs can help make sure root-feeding plants are well nourished if you're using just gravel or sand. The soil goes in first toward the middle and back where the plants will be. The front of the tank will be left mostly open to make plenty of viewing space. Time to add in some stones, which I plan to arrange in a cave-like structure. These frogs like to have hiding places as well as easy access to the surface of the water since they breathe air. This type of build will provide both. Using some larger rocks, I created a C shape standing them up. I placed other supporting rocks around the main ones, which created some mini caves on either side. One large stone goes on top to create the top of the cave. It also provides a level platform close to the surface. Everything then gets capped with a layer of sand. I made sure to fill in every gap and get a nice even layer all around. This can be done first and then the stones placed in. There isn't a specific order to this, we just have to make sure that the soil is covered. When putting in decor, consider where your equipment is going to go to make sure there is enough room. This tank will be getting a sponge filter to provide mechanical filtration, circulation, and airflow. A heater will make sure the water stays a consistent warm temperature. These guys don't like to be too cold, so they definitely need a heater. Both fit nicely in the right corner in the back. We can use some larger leafed plants in front of them to make sure everything looks a bit more natural. A light will be used as well to keep the plants growing. The Aquariumcoop Easy LED has lots of different brightness settings and makes the plants look nice. This is the 20-inch light and it fits perfectly on the 10-gallon. It'll go on the tank after the plants are already in. As far as the type of plants to use, larger leafed plants that will grow close to the surface will be ideal for this type of critter that will be living in here. They'll make great hiding spots and resting places for easy access to air. An Amazon sword, pennywort, and this huge Bacopa caroliniana will take up the background of the tank behind the rock structure. I removed the plants from their pot and rock wool and gave them a good rinse. I broke up the Bacopa and pennywort into a couple bunches to get more coverage. The roots get buried into the soil beneath the sand using planting tweezers. This can be done with just your hand as well if that's easier. These plants will settle in and get roots established soon, so it doesn't have to be perfect. To cover the filter and heater just a little bit, I used some larger pennywort. This is optional, but can make the tank just a little more natural looking. For in among the rocks and to fill in the gaps in the middle, Java Fern and Anubias nana petite will do the job. They're both easy to care for and don't demand high lighting. Even if the other plants in the back grow over the top and shade some of the light, these plants won't mind. Super glue can be used, but I prefer to just get the roots tightly wedged between rocks so they stay put. Nothing fancy. While planting, I use a spray bottle to mist the plants and keep them from drying out completely. Leaves on aquatic plants can get crunchy pretty quick if left to dry out, and they can't really be recovered, so best to keep them wet or humid. Around the front of the rocks in the sand, I'm planting little bunches of microsword broken up from a pot. This is to look like little pieces of grass just popped up here. This plant will enjoy the higher lighting down in front of the tank and send out new shoots as runners as it grows. Now that all the plants are in the tank, we'll get ready to fill it up. To disperse the water and keep the substrate undisturbed, I filled it up from the front where it's just a layer of sand. It still disturbed a few pieces of soil from underneath, but we can remove all those once the tank is done filling. Make sure to dechlorinate your tap water if that's what you're using. My tap water contains chloramines, which is toxic to fish, so a good dechlorinator is important. To get rid of any extra soil pieces, I just use a magnet to pick them up off the sand. This works because the soil contains iron, which is good for the plants, but it's also magnetic. The sand is inert, so the magnet just picks up the soil and leaves the sand undisturbed. I added the light for the plants and plugged it into a timer. It will be on for about 6 hours per day to start. I can always extend this in the future, but too much light right off the bat can make algae blooms worse, so I'm trying to avoid that. The planted tank is looking good so far, but it'll need to take some time to settle in and get a colony of beneficial bacteria established to be able to turn the waste and ammonia that the frogs produce into less harmful compounds. To give the tank a jump start, one of the most effective methods is to use filter media from an established tank that's been running for a while. The media will be packed with bacteria that has been growing in the other tank and will seed the new tank. I just used a sponge from a sponge filter and squeezed it all around. Fritz-Zyme 7 is a good alternative if you don't have access to an established tank, since it contains live beneficial bacteria as an additive. But you can always ask a friend or your local fish store to help you out as well. To get the tank started, I also added some small ram's horn snails. This is totally optional. Some people don't like the look of snails, and these breed pretty prolifically in fresh water, so there will eventually be quite a few of them. Typically, plants carry snails and snail eggs anyway, so I'd likely end up with these at some point regardless, but I kinda like them because they clean the algae and I feel like they add another layer of nature into the tank and make it look more like an ecosystem. They'll also produce ammonia and help the bacteria colony to grow right from the start. I let the tank sit and run and tested the water until it read 0 ammonia. The first few days read quite a lot, but it dropped down to 0 around day 5 and has stayed consistent since. The other water parameters are reading correctly as well. No nitrite, and some nitrate is to be expected. The nitrates will feed the plants over time and will be continuously produced by the bacteria. This tank will also get regular water changes, and I already did about a 25% change before getting ready to add the animals, and added a little prime dechlorinator. I did this to bring the nitrate level down as low as possible. I then headed on over to Aquariumcoop to pick up the frogs. They recommended 3 for this 10-gallon tank, and I had the choice of standard brown color or the leucistic variety, which is a yellowish white. For a trio, we chose 2 brown frogs and 1 leucistic. They're really active with full bellies, which is a good sign. Time to get them packed up to go home. To get them acclimated, I just poured tank water into their bag every 20 minutes or so until it was evenly mixed. There are lots of different acclimation methods though. Aquariumcoop has a straightforward guide on the website. Once they were ready to go, I moved them into a clean transfer cup to pour right into the tank. These guys don't always do the best if handled with a net, so I used my hands to make sure they don't get injured. I was able to get them into the tank pretty quickly, and they seemed to settle in right away. They're exploring around and checking out the plants, not showing signs of too much stress. I'll be keeping a close eye on this tank though, and testing the water over the next few weeks with test strips to make sure everything is going smoothly. I added a tight-fitting lid on top to keep everyone inside the tank. They would try to jump out otherwise, so this is an essential step. The frogs got a little snack as well, and were all very happy to gobble up some frozen bloodworms. All 3 took food no problem, which is a great sign. One of the trickier aspects of these guys is the way they eat though. They are a little clumsy and often miss their own mouth when shoveling the food toward their face. I target fed these frogs because they couldn't quite figure out how to eat out of a glass food dish, but that's the ultimate goal. Overall, this planted tank turned out as planned, and the little rock caves are making great hiding places, as well as the plants. The frogs have easy access to the surface for air and seem to be enjoying exploring around their new home. Would you keep a planted tank for African dwarf frogs?
Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. To watch another one just like this, click here.